Have you ever felt that quiet fear in your chest when you're about to let your child go somewhere far from you? A place where you can't see them, can't protect them, can't hear their voice every night before sleep? Imagine standing at the gate, watching your daughter walk away with her small suitcase, trying to be brave while something deep inside you whispers, "What if something isn't right?" This is not just a story, it's a warning, a lesson, and a question every parent should ask before making a decision they can't easily undo. In a quiet village surrounded by tall trees and dusty roads, there lived a young girl named Amara. She was known for her bright smile and curious mind. Everyone in the village would say she was destined for something great. Her parents, like many others, dreamed of giving her a better future. Better education, better opportunities, a life beyond the limits of their small community. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep shade of orange, Amara's parents sat outside their home discussing her future. They had heard about a boarding school far away in the city. It was said to be one of the best, strict discipline, excellent teachers, and students who went on to become successful. For them, it felt like the perfect opportunity. But not everyone shared their excitement. Amara's grandmother, who had seen more years than anyone else in the family, grew quiet whenever the boarding school was mentioned. She would shake her head slowly, her eyes filled with something that looked like worry, or perhaps memory. One night she finally spoke. "Not every place that shines is safe," she said softly. "And not every story told about a place is the whole truth." Her words hung in the air, but they were quickly brushed aside. After all, times had changed and opportunities like this didn't come often. Amara herself was excited. The thought of meeting new friends, learning new things and seeing a bigger world filled her with joy. She packed her clothes with care, folding each one neatly as if preparing for a grand adventure. The day of departure arrived faster than anyone expected. The journey to the school was long. The roads became smoother, the buildings taller, and the air felt different, less familiar. When they finally reached the school gates, Amara looked up in awe. The building stood tall and proud, its walls clean and its grounds quiet. It looked perfect, almost too perfect. At the entrance stood a woman with a firm expression, dressed neatly, her posture straight and unwelcoming. She introduced herself as the headmistress. Her voice was calm, but there was something about it that made Amara's mother instinctively hold her daughter's hand a little tighter. "Your daughter will be safe here," the headmistress said. "We have strict rules. Discipline is everything." Those words should have been comforting. Instead they felt heavy. As the paperwork was signed and the final goodbyes approached, Amara hugged her parents tightly. Her mother smiled, but her eyes were wet. Her father tried to stay strong, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Be brave," he said. "This is for your future." Amara nodded, holding back her own tears. She watched as her parents walked away, their figures getting smaller and smaller until they disappeared beyond the gates. For a moment she felt a strange emptiness, like something had been left behind with them. The school seemed quiet as she was led inside. Too quiet. The other girls she passed in the hallway barely spoke. Some avoided eye contact altogether. Others looked at her with expressions she couldn't quite understand. Was it fear? Was it warning? That night, as Amara lay in her new bed, the unfamiliar sounds of the boarding school filled the darkness. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. A distant door creaked. She turned to the girl in the bed next to hers, whispering softly, "Is it always like this here?" The girl hesitated before answering. "You'll find out," she said. Her voice was low, almost trembling. Amara tried to sleep, but something didn't feel right. It wasn't just homesickness. It was deeper than that. A feeling she couldn't explain, like she had stepped into a place where things were not as they seemed. Hours later, just as she was about to drift off, she heard it. A faint sound. Not footsteps. Not the wind. It sounded like someone crying. Amara sat up slowly, her heart beginning to race. She looked around the room. All the other girls appeared to be asleep. The sound came again, a little clearer this time, echoing softly through the hallway. She slipped out of bed, her feet touching the cold floor. Step by step, she moved toward the door, her hand trembling as she reached for the handle. Something inside her said to stop. But curiosity pulled stronger. As she slowly opened the door and peeked into the dimly lit corridor, she noticed something strange. A shadow. Standing at the far end of the hallway. Watching. And just as her eyes tried to focus, the crying suddenly stopped. Amara froze at the doorway, her fingers still wrapped around the cold handle. The hallway stretched out in front of her, long and dim, with a single flickering light at the far end. The shadow she had seen didn't move, but it didn't feel still either. It felt aware. Her heart beat faster. She blinked once, then again. The shadow was gone. For a moment she thought maybe her eyes were playing tricks on her. Maybe it was just the light or the way the darkness gathered in corners. She stepped out into the hallway, her bare feet silent against the floor. The air felt colder here, heavier than inside the dorm room. "Hello," she whispered. No answer. Only silence. She took a few steps forward, her eyes scanning every corner. The crying had stopped completely, as if it had never been there in the first place. But she knew what she heard. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't her imagination. As she reached the middle of the hallway, she noticed something else. A door slightly open. It wasn't like the others. All the dorm rooms were closed, neat and identical. But this one stood out, its door just enough ajar to reveal darkness inside. Amara hesitated. She remembered her father's voice telling her to be brave, but also her grandmother's quiet warning echoing somewhere in her mind. Not every place that shines is safe. She swallowed and slowly reached out, pushing the door open just a little more. The hinges made a soft creaking sound that seemed too loud in the silence. Inside the room was empty. Or at least it looked empty at first. There were no beds, no desks, no personal belongings. Just bare walls and a small window covered with thick curtains. But as her eyes adjusted, she noticed faint markings on the wall. Scratches. Lines. Like someone had been counting, or trying to leave a message. A chill ran down her spine. She stepped back quickly, her courage fading all at once. This didn't feel like a place students used. It felt hidden. Forgotten. Or maybe, ignored on purpose. Amara. The voice came suddenly from behind her. She gasped and turned around. It was the same girl from the bed next to hers. She stood a few steps away, her arms crossed tightly, her eyes filled with something between worry and frustration. "You shouldn't be here," the girl said quietly. Amara tried to steady her voice. "I heard someone crying. I thought." "You thought wrong," the girl interrupted, glancing quickly down the hallway as if checking whether someone else was nearby. "Come back to the room. Now." There was something urgent in her tone that Amara couldn't ignore. Without arguing, she followed her back, closing the door behind them as softly as possible. Once inside, the girl locked it. That made Amara even more uneasy. "What's going on?" Amara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you acting like this? And what is that room?" The girl didn't answer immediately. She walked to her bed and sat down, her shoulders tense. For a moment, it looked like she was deciding whether to say anything at all. "My name is Zuri," she finally said. "And if you want to stay out of trouble in this boarding school, you need to stop asking questions." Amara frowned. "But something isn't right here. You know it too." Zuri looked at her, really looked at her this time, as if trying to understand what kind of person she was dealing with. "You're new," she said softly. "You still think this place is what they told you it would be, isn't it?" Amara asked. Zuri gave a small, humorless smile. "That's what everyone thinks when they arrive." A heavy silence filled the room. Outside, the faint sound of footsteps echoed again, slower this time, more deliberate. Both girls went quiet instantly. Zuri raised a finger to her lips, signaling Amara not to speak. The footsteps stopped right outside their door. Amara's breath caught in her throat. A shadow passed beneath the small gap at the bottom of the door, then paused. It felt like whoever was outside was listening, waiting. After a few long seconds, the footsteps continued down the hallway, fading into the distance. Only then did Zuri relax slightly. "You see," she whispered. "This is why you don't wander around at night." Amara's mind raced. Who was that? Zuri shook her head. "We're not supposed to know." "Not supposed to, or not allowed to?" Amara pressed. Zuri didn't answer. Instead, she lay down on her bed and turned her back, clearly ending the conversation. But Amara couldn't just let it go. Too many things didn't make sense. The empty room. The scratches on the wall. The crying. The shadow. And now, the footsteps. The next morning, everything felt strangely normal. The girls woke up early, dressed in their uniforms and lined up for breakfast. Teachers walked around with strict expressions, watching every movement. The headmistress stood at the front, her presence commanding silence without a single word. To anyone looking from the outside, it was a perfect boarding school, organized, disciplined, controlled. But Amara noticed the small things. The way some girls avoided looking at certain doors in the hallway. The way conversations stopped the moment a teacher passed by. The way Zuri kept glancing over her shoulder, even during the day. It was like everyone was carrying a secret they were too afraid to speak about. Later that afternoon, during a short break, Amara found herself alone near the back of the school building. The area was quieter, away from the main grounds. There were fewer students here and the air felt still. That's when she saw it again. The same hallway window from the empty room. From the outside. She stepped closer, her curiosity pulling her in despite everything. The curtains inside were slightly open now, just enough to reveal a small part of the room. And for a split second, she thought she saw movement. Not a shadow this time. A face. So, watching her from inside. Amara stumbled back, her heart pounding loudly in her ears. She blinked hard, trying to make sense of what she had just seen. But when she looked again, the curtain had fallen back into place, and the window was completely still. Amara stood there for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the window as if it might reveal something again. But nothing moved. The curtain stayed still, the glass reflecting only the empty space behind her. For a second she almost convinced herself she imagined it. Almost. But deep down she knew she hadn't. She turned quickly and walked back toward the main building, her steps faster than before. Her mind was racing. First the crying, then the shadow, then the locked door, and now, a face in a room that was supposed to be empty. Something was wrong with this boarding school. Not just strange, wrong. When she reached the courtyard, the noise of other students brought a strange kind of relief. Girls were talking in small groups, some laughing softly, others sitting quietly with books in their laps. It looked normal again just like it did that morning. But now Amara saw it differently. It felt like a mask, like everyone was playing a role they had learned. She spotted Zuri sitting under a tree, tracing lines in the dirt with a stick. Amara walked over and sat beside her without saying anything at first. "I saw something," Amara said finally. Zuri didn't look up. "You're going to keep seeing things if you don't stop looking for them." "This wasn't nothing," Amara insisted. "I saw someone in that room. The same one from last night. There's someone in there." That made Zuri pause. She slowly lifted her head and looked at Amara, her expression more serious than before. "You went back there?" she asked quietly. "From outside," Amara said. "I didn't go inside again. But I saw a face. I'm sure of it." Zuri glanced around quickly, making sure no one was close enough to hear. Then she leaned in slightly. "Listen to me carefully," she said. "That part of the building, we're not supposed to go near it. Not during the day, not at night." "Why?" Amara asked. Zuri hesitated again just like the night before. But this time she didn't shut the conversation down completely. "Because girls who get too curious," she stopped, choosing her words carefully, "they start having problems." "What kind of problems?" Amara pressed. Zuri's grip tightened around the stick in her hand. "They get called to the office more. They get watched. And sometimes," she lowered her voice even more, "they disappear from the dorms." Amara felt a cold wave pass through her. "Disappear?" she repeated. "They tell us their parents came to take them home," Zuri said. "But no one ever sees those parents. And those girls never come back." Amara's thoughts immediately went to the face she saw at the window. "What if they didn't leave?" she said slowly. "What if they're still here?" Zuri didn't answer. That silence said more than any words could. The school bell rang sharply, breaking the moment. Students began moving toward their classrooms in an orderly line. Zuri stood up quickly. "Don't talk about this again," she said. "Not here. Not with anyone." "But," Amara started. "Please," Zuri cut in, her tone almost pleading now. "You don't understand this place yet." Amara watched her walk away, blending into the line of students like nothing had happened. But Amara couldn't just forget. Not after everything she had seen and heard. That evening, during study time, Amara tried to focus on her books, but her mind kept drifting. Every small sound made her look up. Every movement in the corner of her eye made her uneasy. The classroom felt too controlled, too quiet, like everyone was afraid to make a mistake. At the front, one of the teachers walked slowly between the desks, watching each student carefully. Her footsteps were soft, but her presence felt heavy. When she passed by Amara, she paused for just a second longer than necessary. "Are you settling in well?" the teacher asked. Her tone was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "Yes, ma'am," Amara replied, forcing a small smile. The teacher held her gaze for a moment, as if trying to read something beneath her answer. Then she nodded and moved on. Amara let out a quiet breath she didn't realize she was holding. Later that night, back in the dorm, the atmosphere felt different again. The girls spoke in whispers if they spoke at all. Some lay in their beds staring at the ceiling, others turned toward the wall, silent and still. Zuri didn't say a word to Amara. It was as if the conversation from earlier had never happened. But Amara noticed something else. One bed near the corner of the room was empty. She hadn't paid attention before, but now it stood out clearly. The blanket was neatly folded, the pillow untouched. It didn't look like someone had just stepped out. It looked like no one had been there for a while. Amara leaned closer to Zuri. "Whose bed is that?" she whispered. Zuri's eyes flicked toward it, then away quickly. "Sleep," she said quietly. "Don't ask." That answer only made Amara more certain. As the lights went out and the room fell into darkness, the same uneasy feeling returned. Amara lay awake, staring into the shadows, listening. Minutes passed. Then an hour. And just when she thought the night might stay quiet, she heard it again. That faint crying sound. Closer this time. Not from down the hallway. From somewhere inside the building, maybe even on the same floor. Amara slowly turned her head toward the door. And then she noticed something that made her heart stop. The handle of the dorm room door was moving. Very slowly. As if someone on the outside was trying to open it without making a sound. Amara's whole body went still as she watched the door handle turn ever so slightly again. It wasn't fast. It wasn't loud. It was careful, like whoever was outside knew exactly what they were doing. Her heart started pounding so hard she was afraid someone else in the room might hear it. She slowly turned her head toward Zuri's bed, hoping she was awake. But Zuri was still lying there, facing the wall, unmoving. No one else seemed to notice. Or maybe they were pretending not to. The handle moved once more. Then stopped. Silence followed, thick and heavy, like the entire room was holding its breath. Amara didn't know what to do. Every instinct told her to stay still, to stay quiet. But another part of her felt like if she didn't move now, she might not get another chance to understand what was happening in this boarding school. Slowly, she pushed herself up from the bed. The floor creaked under her weight. The sound felt too loud. Her eyes stayed locked on the door. The handle was still now, but she knew someone was there. Waiting. She glanced again at Zuri. Still no movement. Amara took a small step forward, then another. Each step felt heavier than the last, like the air itself was resisting her. She reached the edge of her bed and stopped, her hand hovering in the air. Another soft sound came from outside. Not the handle this time. A whisper. Her name. Amara. She froze completely. It was faint, almost swallowed by the silence, but it was there. Clear enough for her to hear. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned slightly toward the door, her lips parting but no words coming out. Amara? Again. This time closer. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign that someone else had heard it. But the other girls remained still. No one moved. No one spoke. It felt like she was the only one awake in the entire world. She took one step closer to the door. Then another. Her hand reached out slowly, trembling, until her fingers were just inches away from the handle. And then, a sharp knock echoed through the room. Not soft this time. Loud. Sudden. Amara gasped and stumbled back, her hand flying to her chest. That was enough to finally wake Zuri. "What are you doing?" Zuri whispered sharply, sitting up quickly. Amara turned to her, panic in her eyes. "Someone's outside. They were calling my name." Zuri's face changed immediately. All sleepiness was gone. She jumped out of bed and rushed to Amara's side, grabbing her arm tightly. "Don't open it," she said firmly. "I wasn't going to," Amara replied, still shaken. "But they know my name." "Zuri, how do they know my name?" Zuri didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked slowly toward the door, listening carefully. The hallway outside was silent again. Too silent. Then, just as suddenly as it started, a soft scratching sound came from the other side of the door. Like fingernails dragging gently across wood. Amara stepped back instinctively. Zuri raised a hand, signaling her to stay quiet. The scratching stopped. Then came a voice again. "Oh, come." Almost familiar. "Open the door." Zuri's grip tightened. "No," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Amara's mind was racing now. Everything she had seen since arriving, the empty room, the crying, the shadow, the face in the window, the disappearing girls, it all started to connect in a way she didn't like. "This isn't normal," Amara whispered. "This isn't just strict discipline. Something is wrong here." Zuri looked at her, her eyes filled with something heavy. "I told you not to ask questions," she said quietly. "But it's too late for that now," Amara replied. Another knock came. Harder this time. The door shook slightly. A few girls in the room stirred, finally waking up. Confused whispers filled the air. "What's happening? Who is at the door? Is it a teacher?" Zuri quickly turned to them. "Stay in your beds. Don't move." But the knocking continued. More urgent now. More forceful. Amara stepped closer to Zuri again. If this is a teacher, they wouldn't act like this, she said. Zuri didn't respond. Instead, she walked to the side of the room and picked up something from under her bed, a small, folded piece of paper. She looked at it for a second, then quickly hid it again when another knock echoed through the room. Amara noticed. "What is that?" she asked. Zuri hesitated, then shook her head. "Not now." Outside, the knocking suddenly stopped. The silence that followed felt worse than the sound itself. Amara walked slowly toward the door again, despite Zuri's warning behind her. She placed her ear near it. Nothing. No footsteps. No whisper. Just empty silence. And then, a soft tap. Right beside her ear. From inside the room. Amara spun around immediately. But there was nothing behind her. The girls were still in their beds. Zuri was standing still, watching the door now too. But something had changed. The air in the room felt colder. Heavier. Like something unseen had entered without opening the door. Amara's voice barely came out. "Zuri, did you feel that?" Zuri didn't answer. Instead, she slowly pointed toward the corner of the room. The same corner where the empty bed was. Amara followed her gaze. And that's when she saw it. The blanket on the empty bed was slightly lifted. As if someone had just sat down. Amara couldn't move her eyes away from that empty bed. The blanket was lifted just slightly at the edge, like someone had just sat down and stood up again in a hurry. But there was no one there. No sound. No movement. Just that small, unsettling change in something that should have stayed untouched. A cold feeling crawled up her spine. "Zuri," she whispered, her voice shaky. "Did you see that?" Zuri didn't answer right away. She was staring at the bed too, her face tense in a way Amara had never seen before. Then, slowly, Zuri stepped forward. "No one touches that bed," she said quietly. Amara frowned. "But it moved. I saw it." Zuri shook her head once. "That bed has been empty since the first week of the term." That sentence made the room feel even heavier. One of the girls behind them spoke softly. It belonged to Amina. The name hung in the air like a warning. Amara turned slightly. "Who is Amina?" No one answered immediately. The girls exchanged quick, nervous glances, like they were deciding whether speaking would bring trouble. Finally, Zuri spoke, her voice low. "She was like you." Amara's chest tightened. "What does that mean?" Zuri looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Curious. Brave. Asking too many questions about the school. Especially about the restricted wing." Amara felt her stomach twist. "The empty rooms." Zuri nodded slightly. "She kept asking," Zuri continued, "about the noises at night. About the girls who leave without saying goodbye. About that part of the building no one is allowed to enter." Amara glanced toward the hallway without thinking. The same hallway she had walked last night. Zuri's voice dropped even lower. "One morning she didn't come to class." A silence followed that felt too sharp. Amara swallowed. "What happened to her?" Zuri hesitated again, and that hesitation said more than words. "They told us she was taken home," Zuri said finally. "But her things were still here. Her books. Her shoes. Even her uniform was folded on her bed, just like it was waiting for her to come back." Amara's mind flashed back to the empty bed beside her. The neat pillow. The untouched space. "And no one questioned it?" she asked. Zuri gave a small, bitter smile. "We learned not to." Another soft sound came from the hallway. A dragging noise. Slow. Deliberate. All the girls in the room went still again. Amara felt her heartbeat in her throat. "That sound, it's outside again." Zuri stepped closer to the door, but this time she didn't try to listen. She just stared at it as if waiting for something to happen. The dragging stopped. Then a soft knock followed. 3 taps. Slow. Controlled. Zuri closed her eyes for a moment, then whispered, "It's not supposed to happen like this." Amara turned to her quickly. "What do you mean?" Zuri opened her eyes, and for the first time, Amara saw fear clearly in them. "This is not a normal visit," she said. Before Amara could respond, a voice came again from outside the door. But this time it wasn't calling her name. It was speaking to someone else. "Zuri, open the door." Amara froze. Zuri's face went pale. The girls in the room started whispering again, confusion spreading fast. Did it just say her name? No one calls students at night. Is that a teacher? But Zuri wasn't moving. She was staring at the door like it had suddenly become dangerous in a way words couldn't explain. Amara stepped closer to her. "They know your name too?" Zuri didn't answer immediately. Then she whispered something that made Amara's chest tighten. "They always know." The knocking came again. Harder this time. The door shook slightly in its frame. Amara backed away instinctively, but Zuri suddenly grabbed her wrist. "Don't let them hear you too clearly," she said urgently. "Who are they?" Amara asked. Zuri looked at her, then at the door, then back at her again. And what she said next made everything worse. "There are rules in this boarding school," she said. "Rules that the headmistress doesn't write down." Amara's breathing slowed. "What rules?" Zuri hesitated, then spoke. "Some girls are watched more than others." Another knock echoed through the room. Louder. Closer. "And when they start asking questions," Zuri continued, "they are marked." Amara felt a cold wave pass through her body. "Marked for what?" she whispered. Zuri didn't answer. Instead, she slowly pulled her hand away from Amara and stepped toward the center of the room. The knocking stopped again. Silence returned. But it didn't feel empty this time. It felt like waiting. Then suddenly the lights in the room flickered once, twice, and went out completely. A few girls gasped. Someone screamed softly in the darkness. Amara stood still, her eyes trying to adjust. But the room was now almost completely black. Only the faint light from under the door remained. Zuri's voice cut through the darkness. "Don't move." Another sound came. Not from the door this time. From inside the room. A slow breathing sound. Very close. Too close. Amara turned her head slightly, her whole body stiffening. Something in the darkness had shifted. Something was now inside the room with them. And then, a soft whisper came right beside her ear again. But this time it wasn't her name. It was a warning. "You shouldn't have looked." Amara's whole body locked at that whisper. "You shouldn't have looked." It was right beside her ear, so close she could feel the breath of it, even though she couldn't see anyone. Her mind went blank for a second, like her thoughts had been cut off mid-sentence. Then panic hit her. She stepped back quickly in the dark, bumping into one of the beds. A few girls gasped, someone cried out softly, but the room was too dark to see anything clearly. Only the faint line of light under the door remained, thin and shaky. Zuri's voice broke through the darkness. "Stay still," she said sharply. But it was too late. The air in the room shifted again. Something moved. Not fast. Not loud. Slow, deliberate. Like it already knew where everyone was. Amara tried to focus, her eyes straining in the dark. Then just for a second the emergency light outside flickered and she saw it. A figure. Standing near the empty bed. Tall. Not fully clear but enough to feel real. And then the voice came again, but this time it wasn't just a whisper. It filled the room. "Zuri. You disobeyed again." Zuri stepped forward immediately, her voice shaking but firm. "Leave them alone." Amara turned toward her, confused. "Zuri, what is happening?" Zuri didn't look at her. Her eyes were fixed on the figure in the darkness. "I told you not to ask questions," she said softly. "But I couldn't let another one disappear without knowing why." Amara's heart pounded. Disappear? The figure moved slightly, and the light from the hallway caught just enough of its face. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't something unnatural. It was a woman. Wearing the same uniform as the staff. The headmistress. But something about her expression was different now. No strict authority. No calm discipline. Only something cold and deeply controlled. "You've been interfering with the process," the headmistress said calmly. Zuri stepped closer. "It's not a process. It's wrong." The room went silent. Even the other girls stopped moving. Amara felt like she was standing in the middle of something she was never meant to understand. The headmistress turned slightly toward her. "And you," she said, her eyes locking onto Amara, "you were not supposed to reach this point so quickly." Amara's voice shook. "What point? What is this place?" For a moment there was silence. Then the headmistress walked slowly toward the door. She didn't seem in a hurry. She didn't seem afraid. "You were sent here because you were chosen," she said. Amara frowned. "Chosen for what?" Zuri answered before the headmistress could. "For control," she said bitterly. "They don't just teach here. They study behavior. They monitor fear. They test obedience." Amara's stomach dropped. "That's not possible." The headmistress interrupted calmly. "It is necessary." That word hit harder than anything else. Necessary. Like everything happening here had a purpose. Zuri shook her head. "Girls don't disappear because they leave. They disappear because they don't pass." Amara looked at her in shock. "Pass what?" The headmistress spoke again, her voice steady. "Adjustment." The word made no sense at first. Then slowly it started to. Amara remembered the empty room. The scratches on the wall. The girls who avoided certain doors. The silence when names were mentioned. This school? Amara whispered. It's not a school. Zuri looked at her. No, she said. It's a system. The headmistress stepped closer now. And every system requires order. Amara took a step back. You can't just take girls and... But Zuri cut her off. They don't take them, she said. They erase what they were before they arrived. And replace it with what they want. A heavy silence filled the room. The truth felt too big, too hard to accept. Amara's voice broke slightly. And the crying, the shadow, the voices? Zuri glanced at the empty bed. That's what happens when someone fails halfway, she said quietly. They don't fully leave. They don't fully stay. The headmistress nodded slightly as if confirming something. Some resist longer than others, she said. But eventually all understand. Amara felt tears sting her eyes, not from fear but from disbelief. And Amina? She asked suddenly. What happened to her? Zuri looked down. The silence that followed said everything. But before anyone could speak again, the emergency lights suddenly turned on fully. The room was bright again. And the figure of the headmistress was gone. The door was wide open. The hallway was empty. No footsteps. No sound. Just silence. Amara turned quickly. Where did she go? Zuri didn't answer immediately. Then she walked to the door and looked outside carefully. She didn't leave, Zuri said softly. Amara frowned. Then where is she? Zuri turned back slowly. She never enters rooms like this alone. A cold realization settled in. Amara slowly stepped toward the hallway. And that's when she saw it. Down the corridor, doors were opening. One by one. And inside each doorway stood a girl. Watching. Silent. So. All looking at her. Not with fear. Not with confusion. But with recognition. Zuri stepped beside Amara and whispered one final thing. You passed the first stage. Amara turned to her sharply. What stage? Zuri looked at her, her expression calm, almost resigned. The stage where you realize you were never the only one being watched. A faint sound echoed again through the hallway. Soft footsteps. Approaching. From both ends. Amara stood frozen as the lights flickered once more. And this time she finally understood the real horror of the boarding school. It was never about girls disappearing. It was about what was waiting for them, when they stopped being seen as individuals. And as the doors slowly began to close again, one by one, Amara realized the test was not over. It had just changed. Amara stood frozen as the hallway filled with still figures watching her from every doorway. The air felt heavy like it had been trapped inside the building for too long. The flickering lights above made everything look unstable, like reality itself could break at any second. Zuri gently touched her arm. Don't run, she said softly. That's what they expect. Amara's voice came out shaky. Then what do we do? For the first time, Zuri didn't look afraid. Instead, there was something steady in her expression, like she had finally accepted something she had been carrying for too long. We stop being afraid, she said. The footsteps in the hallway grew louder, echoing from both ends now. The girls standing in the doorways didn't move. They just watched. Some of them looked familiar in a strange way, like faces Amara had seen in passing since she arrived, but never really noticed. Zuri stepped forward into the hallway. Amara hesitated, then followed. As they walked, the hallway didn't feel like a school anymore. It felt like a long corridor of silence, filled with stories that were never allowed to be spoken. Zuri finally broke the silence. Amina didn't disappear, she said quietly. Amara turned to her. Then where is she? Zuri stopped walking. She's here, she said. Amara looked around quickly, her heart tightening. Where? Zuri pointed slowly toward the girls watching them. And then Amara saw it. Among the girls, one of them stepped slightly forward. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something different. Not fear. Not confusion. Awareness. It was Amina. Amara's breath caught. But they said she left, Amara whispered. Zuri shook her head. They say that about everyone who reaches the last stage. Amara looked back at the headmistress, who was now standing at the far end of the hallway. She was watching, not interfering, as if waiting for something to finish playing out. This isn't a school, Amara said slowly. It's a system like you said. But why? Zuri looked at her. Because they believe fear can be controlled, she said. And if you control fear early, you control everything that follows. Amara felt something shift inside her. Not just fear anymore, but understanding mixed with disbelief. You mean all of us, Are part of something like an experiment? She asked. Zuri didn't deny it. Amina stepped forward a little more, her voice soft but clear. They watch how we react, she said. How we behave when we are alone. When we are confused. When we are afraid. Amara shook her head slowly. That's not education. No, Zuri said. It's conditioning. The headmistress finally spoke again from the end of the hallway. Order is necessary, she said calmly. Without structure, fear becomes chaos. We prevent chaos. Amara turned toward her, her voice stronger now. You don't prevent fear. You create it. A pause followed. For the first time, the headmistress didn't respond immediately. The hallway grew silent again, but this time it felt different. Not threatening. More like something was reaching its end. Zuri looked at Amara. This is the part where most girls break, she said quietly. But some don't. Amara understood what she meant. The system wasn't just about control. It was about breaking resistance until nothing remained except obedience. But standing there, looking at Zuri, and Amina, and the other girls watching quietly, Amara realized something else too. Not everyone had broken. The headmistress took one step forward. You will return to your dormitories, she said. And you will forget what you have seen. Her voice was calm again. Controlled. Final. But Amara didn't move. Neither did Zuri. Neither did Amina. For the first time, the silence in the hallway felt like resistance instead of fear. Zuri turned slightly toward the others. We remember, she said simply. Amina nodded. One by one, the girls in the doorway stepped out a little more. Not aggressively. Not loudly. Just present. Awake. Amara realized then that the system only worked because silence was accepted. Because fear was obeyed. But not anymore. The headmistress's expression changed slightly. Not anger. Not panic. Something closer to calculation. This will be corrected, she said. Zuri smiled faintly. Not anymore. A soft alarm echoed faintly through the building, like something being triggered behind closed doors. But no one moved back. Amara felt her hands shaking, but she didn't step away. Instead she spoke. I came here thinking this was my future, she said. But this isn't a future. It's a cage built on silence. Her voice didn't shake as much now. The girls around her listened. Amina stepped forward fully now, standing beside Zuri. We don't go back to the way it was, she said. The hallway lights flickered again. And then slowly, stopped flickering. The headmistress looked around once more. And for the first time she didn't speak. Instead, she turned and walked away down the corridor. No command. No resistance. Just silence. Amara watched her go, confused. Zuri exhaled slowly. She doesn't lose control easily, she said. Amara frowned. Then why is she leaving? Amina answered softly. Because the test changed. Amara looked at her. What test? Amina met her eyes. The test is no longer about who breaks, she said. It's about who remembers. Silence settled over the hallway. The girls slowly began to move, not scattered, not afraid, but together. Like something invisible had shifted between them. Zuri walked beside Amara as they started heading back. You're not going home yet, she said quietly. Amara nodded slowly. I understand. And for the first time since she arrived at the boarding school, she didn't feel alone in her fear. Because now, fear had a name. And it could no longer control them in silence. As they walked back toward the dormitories, the hallway lights stayed steady. No flicker. No shadow. But deep inside the building, somewhere far beyond the classrooms and doors they were allowed to see, something else was still watching. Waiting for what would happen next.